Hello my friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Anastasia and this is the Slavic Witchcraft series. Previously in this series we talked about Russian and Slavic folklore, old gods and goddesses of Slavic paganism, and today we are going to be exploring the Slavic Wheel of the Year. Now, unlike some of the other Western traditions or Wicca, the Slavic Wheel of the Year is not very clearly defined. There is a lot of inconsistencies and arguments among scholars of when certain celebrations took place. It is believed that the Slavs may have followed a different kind of calendar. They may have followed the lunar calendar. There's also other variations in calendar dates that kind of don't align with the calendar we use today, which is Gregorian. But regardless, you'll notice that most holidays and festivities do follow the same themes that a lot of the Western traditions do. Many sources argue that the Slavic New Year began in the spring with the awakening of the nature world, and I kind of tend to agree. It makes the most sense to me that that's when a new year will begin. So, as I go through these festivities and holidays, I'm going to start with the ones in March, and we'll kind of make our way all the way around to the following year. Let's dive into it. The first holiday I want to discuss is Maslennitsa, also known as Marzana in Poland and other areas. It is usually taking place around early March. March 1st is usually when it's celebrated today. And yes, it is a holiday that is still celebrated today in many Eastern European countries. Personally, I have some really awesome memories associated with Maslennitsa growing up. My family definitely took part in the celebrations. It's fun, it's exciting, it's interesting, so let's talk about it. So Maslennitsa marks the end of winter and the beginning of spring, and also the beginning of a new year. It is a holiday of excitement. The sun is finally back, it's getting warmer, the snow is starting to melt. Big thing that everybody knows about Maslennitsa is that everybody's eating blintzes or bliny. So those were made to represent the sun and the welcoming of the god Yarila, who's the god of the sun. Another fun thing that's done around Maslennitsa is the burning of an effigy for Morana, which is the goddess of winter. So the whole idea is you want to get rid of winter and you want to welcome the sun. Parties usually take place all day. Kids would have fun, the adults would make blintzes, everybody would eat a feast of delicious sweet blintzes with fruits and sour cream. People are drinking, and towards the end of the day when it starts to get dark, that's when the effigy of Morana is brought out, and she's usually marched around with everybody saying their goodbyes to her. And then she is either set on fire or drowned in a body of water. Sometimes both. That's how badly people in Eastern Europe wanted winter to end, and I don't blame them. Overall, this holiday is pretty straightforward. It is the victory of sun, warmth, and spring over winter. Another very interesting springy holiday that takes place sometime in March is called Komoeditsa. Now this holiday, I believe, originated in Belarus, and honestly the first mention of it that I could find was in like the late 1800s, so it's really, I don't know how legit it is in terms of being a true ancient Slavic pagan celebration. So what is Komoeditsa? Again, it's a celebration of spring. It's often associated with bears and bears coming out of hibernation, which is something they do around March. People for this holiday allegedly had this interesting menu planned for their feast. It had to be food that bears like. They would make dried turnips, oat kisel, which is like this oat-based fruit jelly type of thing. And then they would also eat these like fritters or balls made out of peas, which gives the holiday its name, Komoeditsa. Komoeditsa kind of comes from the words kom, which is like a ball or fritter of something, and the editsa is like to eat. So eating balls. Anyways, it was believed that on this day, how you spend it is how the whole year is going to be. So you wanted to wear your best clothes, you wanted to carry some money in your pockets, some gold, you wanted to eat well and really feel full, you wanted to celebrate and be surrounded by your favorite people. Because if you didn't do that, you wouldn't have those things for the rest of the year. So people tried to maximize their excitement and enjoyment of the holiday so that the year ahead would also be as enjoyable as possible. Another big holiday celebration, feasting that we do know about is called Semik. It also has a couple of other names like Rusalka week or Green Week. I haven't been able to pinpoint the dates when this week is typically celebrated. It seems to vary from year to year, but generally it happens sometime in June, usually prior to the summer equinox, right leading up to it, actually. So what is this week? It is an entire week that the villagers would just party, and the general theme was spring turning into summer, fertility, abundance. Women were a big part of this celebration and just celebrating women's fertility and womanhood, girls becoming women, growing into becoming brides. There's a lot of that going on all week. So I think the reason it's called Rusalka week is because it was believed that once the rivers and lakes sort of thawed and it became warm enough, in the summertime, Rusalkas, if you watched my video about folklore and mythical creatures, I talk a lot about Rusalkas, so check it out. It was believed that they exit the lakes and rivers and what have you, and go out into the fields and actually start coexisting with regular people for the duration of the summer, and then come fall, when it gets cold again, they get back into the waters. So one of the things that Rusalkas were believed to do is actually bring some of that water dripping off of their beautiful hair. They bring it into the fields and help water the crops. So it was like a good harvest related thing. But if you remember, Rusalkas can be a little bit scary. So you wanted to placate them, be nice to them, not piss them off, otherwise they might drown you. It was believed you shouldn't do any hard work during this entire week. No hard work at all. Everybody was kind of just relaxing, enjoying the warmth, and celebrating, which sounds awesome. Why don't we do that anymore? As I mentioned, Semik was a big celebration for young women. There was a lot of divination practices going around, women trying to guess who their future husband's gonna be or how lucky their marriage is gonna be, things like that. Young women also got together and would pick a birch tree to decorate in the middle of town. They would throw like their ribbons and beads and maybe even clothing onto this birch tree until it's covered in these beautiful things. And then sometimes the birch tree would even get cut down and sort of marched around the village. Essentially, the birch tree represents, in Slavic culture, the feminine, divine, fertile energy. Which kind of brings me to the next holiday. A big one that I want to discuss is Kupala Night, also known as Kupala Night, Ivan Kupala, Kupalie. It has a couple different names. To me, Kupala Night is sort of an extension of Semik, of Rusalka week. In fact, I would even put it as probably the last day of Rusalka week, the big final day culminating all of it. There are some scholars that argue that it's two separate holidays. There are people who argue that it's the same holiday. You kind of gotta pick what works for you. I like to view it as the final day of Rusalka week, and that's the big celebration day for me, personally. I celebrate it on the summer solstice. Like most European summer solstice holidays, this is all about loving the summer. This is the shortest night of the year, the longest day of the year. It was a relaxing time and a time of celebration and a time of anticipation of better things to come. Now, the word Kupala itself comes from the word for bathing, and it makes sense because on this night, everybody's bathing. There's a mass bathing going on in the village. There were a lot of rituals related to water and fire on that day. Bathing obviously is the water part, and they also lit huge bonfires, lit a bunch of things on fire. Also a lot of herbs and flowers. And again, that theme of femininity, fertility, marriage, union. As I mentioned, love was in the air, so young people would dance around this fire and do these fun little rituals, like boys and girls or young men and women would hold hands in pairs and jump over the fire. And it was believed that if your hands remained clasped and you didn't kind of separate during the jump, then that was a clear indication that the two of you are going to get married in the future. And if your hands did separate, then it's not meant to be. Young women also made wreaths out of herbs and flowers that they would wear on their heads all day. At the end of the night, when it gets dark, everybody's kind of done celebrating, those wreaths would get set on fire and thrown into the water. And so you would see a whole bunch of burning wreaths floating through the river. It's kind of beautiful. It's like fire on water vibes. And actually, it was believed that if the wreath continued to burn while it was in water, that was a good sign that your marriage is going to be good and healthy and happy, versus if the water kind of put the fire out, then it wouldn't be such a happy union. Kupala Night was also considered the best time to collect medicinal herbs. It was believed that they were at their most potent during this time. A flower that is widely associated with Kupala Night is called Ivan da Maria. You can take a look at the picture of it here. It is gorgeous, and it happens to bloom right around the summer equinox in most Eastern European areas. The reason it's associated with Kupala Night is because it's sort of that combination of fire and water. It even looks like it's got fire and water on the flower. So it's just kind of this cool connection that I found to the holiday itself and the themes. So overall, Ivan Kupala, Kupalia, is very much a summer festivity. It's fun, it's a little bit lustful, it's a little bit magic, it's a little bit fertility, marriage, love, that kind of stuff. And young people really loved celebrating it, and I think people still celebrate it to this day because it's a holiday that's full of vitality and joy. By the way, if you guys have been enjoying this video so far, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. I really appreciate it. So we talked about spring and summer. Let's talk a little bit about fall. We know that a lot of other more Western pagan traditions have lots of festivals taking place in the fall, and the Slavs were no different. So there are a lot of names for a lot of the different feasts happening in the fall. Personally, it's easier for me to just kind of combine them all into the autumn equinox, which is around September 20th to the 24th. And it does seem that a lot of these festivities did take place right around that time. Now, like I mentioned, there are a lot of names for these equinoxal fall festivities. Вторые осеннины, Богач, Руен, Tausen, Обжинки, Дожинки, Засидки, and there's probably a lot more. Overall, the theme of all of these celebrations is the ending of summer, the beginning of fall. This is where harvests are at their fullest. People are finishing up in the fields, they're bringing all the food in. It's a time of celebration and gratitude for the abundance that this year has brought, but it is also a time of slowing down a little bit. Even one of the names for the holiday is Zasitki, which kind of translates to sitting down. So a lot of people start to spend more time indoors, starting to get colder outside. It is customary to light a fire in the hearth at home, which is something you probably didn't do for the last couple of months because it's been warm, but the first fire is lit on the autumn equinox. A lot of people are taking all of their harvested foods and finding ways to preserve them, making jars of preserves, fermenting, putting things in the cellar, really organizing that stuff, preparing themselves for a cold winter ahead. Ritual that women would do, they would walk around clockwise around their property or around their home, and that kind of created this invisible circle of protection. Veles is the other big major god that is sort of in charge of the colder months. He's also in charge of the underworld. So usually around the autumn equinox is when people switch from worshipping Yerila and Pirun and focusing more on Veles, because we're about to enter his time, his realm. And so one of the things they would do is they would, once they've harvested everything out of the fields, they would leave one bundle of grain, wheat, or whatever it is that they're harvesting, and braid it, add like a ribbon to it, and it created a beard, and that was supposed to represent Veles's beard. So you would kind of leave that out in the field and maybe leave some offerings for it. The rest of the autumn equinox celebrations was of course accompanied by feasts. These were more indoor feasts where people just kind of took advantage of some of the fresh fruits, vegetables, grains that they've just harvested, really ate their souls out and enjoyed it before the colder months came. Now, another big celebration in the fall, as we all know, is Dziady. This takes place sometime around October 31st to November 2nd. We probably know it better as Halloween these days, or Samhain, and it was celebrated pretty much all over the world in very similar ways, which is pretty amazing to me. Dziady was associated with the dead, the ancestors, and the thinning of the veil. It was believed that they could come in and interact with us during this night. And by the way, I have a whole video about Samhain/Dziady. If you guys want to check it out, I talk a little bit more about the customs and traditions that the Slavs followed. But long story short, very similar to Halloween or Day of the Dead. It was all about remembering them, making sure they know that they're remembered and still welcomed. People would light candles all along the pathway from the cemetery to the village and like throughout the village, which was believed to help them find their way home. And people made masks out of wood and clay called karaboshkis. They were a little spooky looking, but the purpose of the masks was to like put them on and disguise yourself as a deceased spirit. Because with your ancestors, other spirits could also come back, right? It's not just the ancestors, it's any dead spirit could come back. So people did want to protect themselves against some of the more darker, evil spirits that might come back. So that was the purpose of the karaboshki. And it is actually argued by some that karaboshkis were the origins of the jack-o'-lantern that we know and love today in the West. Now, after October 31st, we are in full swing, dead of winter in the Eastern European nations. So the Slavs would usually hunker down, stay home, try to stay safe, try to ration a little bit, try to make it through the darkest and coldest months of the year. And that brings me to the next celebration of Koliada. Koliada, again, dates are unclear. I'm pretty sure they celebrated it on the winter solstice. That makes the most sense to me. In some sources, Koliada is known as Karachun, which actually means short, and that's because it's the shortest day of the year. And the point of the feast and the celebration is that we are finally entering the time when days are starting to get longer and sunlight is slowly returning into our lives. So people kind of felt like they made it through the worst of it. So Koliada was often associated with rebirth, hope, light, new beginnings, very much similar to the themes we see today with Christmas or New Year's. During this time, Veles was the major god that's in charge, and so is Marina. She is the goddess of winter. So the two of them were often worshipped during this holiday. In the villages, people would have these big dancing processions and these coordinated interpretive dances that represented the fight between the light and the dark. People would burn large bonfires throughout the entire night to signify that they've made it through the longest, darkest night. Oftentimes that was accompanied by people drinking, dancing, hanging out around the bonfire all night long. Kids dressed up as winter animals, so like bears, goats, wolves, that kind of thing. They would wear masks and they would dance around the fires and also go door to door, singing songs and asking for like treats or food, which is kind of similar to modern day Christmas carolers. A lot of this, by the way, is still practiced today. Similarly to like Maslennitsa and Kupala Night, Koliada is a holiday that has made it through the years and is still practiced today, especially in smaller communities in Eastern Europe. There was a special log this log would be placed in the center of the bonfire, and it was believed that if it creates a lot of sparks, tons and tons of little sparks coming off of it, then it means spring would come quickly and warmth will come soon, light will come soon, and you'll have a pretty good year ahead. It was also believed that Veles himself, the god of the underworld / winter and wealth and cattle, you can learn more about Veles in my gods video. It was believed that he might show up to the bonfire in the dead of night if you are still out there sitting around and drinking and talking and singing. And if he shows up, it could be a really cool experience. He could ask you some riddles and tricky questions. He could dole out some wisdoms to you. He can give you some tips on how to survive the rest of the winter. He can even leave behind some treats. And if you're sensing a theme here, you are right. This is the origin of Grandfather Frost, who is basically the Santa Claus of Eastern European countries. It was also believed that Veles could knock his giant staff onto that budnik, which is that Yule log I mentioned earlier, and again create all these amazing sparks that are gonna bring so much good luck to the people in the new year. Like many big celebrations, there were a lot of divination practices going around. Again, women would pour candle wax into water and try to see what it shows them. A lot of times it was related to questions about fertility, marriage, things of that nature. Slavs really put marriage and fertility as one of the most important things for women, which is interesting, but also not all that different from other ancient. I mean, that's how the world works, right? I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like I mentioned before, depending on the source and the geographical region and the tradition, these holidays kind of vary both in terms of their names and the ways that they're celebrated and the dates that they're celebrated on. But overall, I think and I hope that I was able to capture the general themes of them. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like it and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. I talk about Slavic paganism and other magical things all the time. Personally, I find Kupala Night is probably my favorite holiday. It's the most fun, plus I love summer. I'd love to hear if you guys have a favorite. I'd love to hear how you guys celebrate them if you do. I'd love to hear if there's anything I missed that you want me to know. And yeah, just leave your feedback in the comments below. I'll see you guys in the next video. Stay tuned for additional videos in the Slavic Witchcraft series. I cannot wait to show you what I've been working on, so I'll see you guys later. Bye.